3 months ago, I had the privilege of finishing the Trans-Caucasian Trail, hiking north to south across Georgia and Armenia. And so in this video, I'm going to try break down my experience of it and help you do it yourself. Okay, let's get started. As you may know, the Trans-Caucasian Trail runs across Georgia and Armenia, and there are two different variations. There's the north to south and the east to west. The east to west variation has not been finished, so I obviously didn't do it. It starts up at the Black Sea and ends right on the border with Iran. I'm covering the route in 11 sections. I've tried to split it up into sections that are worth hiking as blocks, so you could take any one of these sections and do it independently. You can leave your stuff in Tbilisi, so I left a bag at a homestay I was at. I asked them special permission, and they were totally up for that. To get to the start of the Trans-Caucasian Trail, you're going to catch a flight to Tbilisi, Georgia. It's the biggest city with the best airport in the area. And then you're going to jump on either a train or a bus, and it's going to take you all the way up this line towards Zugdidi. But you're going to jump off in this little town and catch an Uber or Bolt down to Anaklia. Then you're going to start the trail. But take note, there's no shops in Anaklia worth mentioning, so shop in Tbilisi or you can find some in this little town. Okay, let's start the trail. The first section of the trail I'm going to cover is 100 kilometers from Anaklia to Mukuri. This section is pretty much flat, so count it as a really good warm-up for the rest of the trail. It's got a lot of back roads and field walking. Finding water is a trick because you can't really drink from any of these rivers, or it wouldn't be advised to. So you want to be shopping in little towns, grabbing bottles of water wherever you can. It's not something that's super rare, so I wouldn't worry about it. I just found stores in most little places and rationed my water accordingly. Food is the same sort of situation. You're going to buy it in local towns, but because you're not passing through any big towns, you're probably going to end up eating some weird corner store kind of food unless you manage to buy enough to get you to Mukuri or this little town here, because there's some decent stores in those too. I took 2.5 days to get from Anaklia all the way almost to Mukuri, so it's pretty doable because it's so flat. I have found a variation of the trail which is worth doing that straightens out this section and avoids about 5 kilometers of tarmac, so I would recommend doing that. For camping, you're just going to be scouting for little bits of field that aren't private property and camping by little rivers. I had a great little camp spot about here, which was behind some ruined buildings and had a swimming spot next to it. It was great. Okay, the second section I think is one of the nicest of the whole trail, if not the nicest. It runs from Mukuri, which you can see just down on the left of the screen, to Zesko, which is up there on the right. My terrible arrows. It's the longest section that I'm covering in one go, and it could really be broken into a couple shorter sections. 100 kilometers from Mukuri to Kaishi, and then a couple, and then you could hike from Kaishi all the way to Mestia, or Mestia to Ushkuli. Those are really your options. The whole section is 240 kilometers, and it is superb. You've got some of the best trails in the whole country and the most hikers by far. This first section from Mukuri to Kaishi is pretty abandoned with some amazing passes. It's well worth doing as a standalone hike, taking 2 to 3 days, because it is pretty intense. You could even do 4 or 5 if you would like to be up there in the mountains. I had some exciting passes in the snow up there. The next section from Kaishi to Mestia is my probably highest recommended section of the whole Trans-Caucasian Trail, simply because it's got some amazing trails and it isn't too packed. This pass up here is superb, it's very big, and then there's good camp spots in each of these ridges between the towns with some insane views. Around Mestia, you'll start encountering more and more hikers, and then this section from Mestia to Ushguli is absolutely jam-packed with hikers. I would recommend not camping and rather staying in one of the little towns which have some great camp spots or accommodation where they'll feed you some good food. Water is not a problem on this section. You'll find it in every little valley with amazing streams everywhere. Granted, I was hiking in September at this point, so conditions can vary, but water is pretty consistent because you've got the Caucasus Mountains on the top side. So I wouldn't worry about water. And the key risks of this section are certainly snow. So you wouldn't want to be doing this too far into the winter because snow does come quite far down. These are actually skiing towns. Mestia is the most notable of those. I would recommend this to any group of hikers who wants to do a bit of an adventure. Section number 3 is Zesko to Oni, and I'm putting this as the worst section of the Trans-Caucasian Trail. I would say that it is better to get to Ushguli and hitchhike all the way back down out of the screen and then back up into the screen to Oni and not do this section. A couple of reasons for this. It is in the border zone, so the border sort of runs not quite like that. The border sort of runs here, and so you're kind of between Russia and Georgia, who are not on the best of terms. What you have to do when you get to Zesko, which is right here, is apply for a border permit, which they'll give you as you arrive, and then you have to do some crazy bush bashing, river walking, more bush bashing, and then an amazing ridge across and down. So you could possibly hike this long section only to discover that you cannot pass this point because of flooding. There's some massive landslides. It's incredibly dangerous. I would petition to the Trans-Caucasian Trail team to somehow remove this, but I do acknowledge that it is going to be incredibly hard to find another variation of this section, but I definitely recommend avoiding it if you can. If you're not a true purist, 100% avoid it. It's not worth your time. And on top of that, you'll be hiking tarmac 16 kilometers from Chebi all the way to Ani. So yeah, this section for camping, it's wild. You can camp anywhere you want. You're not going to encounter people until you get to Chebi, and yeah, water is everywhere. Food, non-existent. So you have to shop in Ushguli or preferably in Mestia. I shopped in Mestia and carried my food all the way until Ani because the shops in any of these towns is really not worth noting. It's a long section of trail without shops. So yeah, beware, you'll be carrying a heavy bag on this section. Section number 4. This is from 400 kilometers, which is where Ani is. It's at 400 kilometers on the trail, to Bakurani, which is roughly 580 kilometers in. This section I've put into one batch because it's very similar throughout. It's beautiful rolling hills and forests with some steep climbs here and there. Right out of Ani, you go up and up and onto a beautiful ridge line which just runs right along here. And then you're sort of winding through forests, doing a fair bit of tarmac around here, and a lot of field walking in these different sections. It's stunning. It's shaded, so it's great for summer walking, but very humid as well. In the bigger towns like Borjomi over here, you'll find some really lovely accommodation, and you may need to do some detours to get to stores, but it's not too hard to find food. Water, carry filtration, and you'll be able to filter enough water from the small streams that you encounter, and you can also buy bottles in the stores that you meet. All the way across to Bakurani from Borjomi is a wonderful bit of trail with some gravel walking on the last bit, but it's absolutely stunning. I highly rate this section. It's a bit different. It's not what you would expect going to Georgia if you're the classic mountain hiker. It's certainly not the normal hiking you would do, because you don't really get to see any views. You're in the forest all the time. And the key risks for this section are probably heat during the summer. I think it would be very hot and humid. It's one of the most tame sections of the whole trail. Losing the trail is fairly possible at times, and try avoid getting hit by a car when you're walking on the tarmac. Okay, section number 5 is Bakurani to Bavra, which is the border post between Georgia and Armenia. This section has blaring warning signs in my mind. It's one that if you were a solo hiker, you should think twice about doing, and if you're a solo female hiker, I wouldn't recommend. You're encountering a lot of shepherds who will not treat you well. They're friendly, but quite intense. On top of that, the biggest risk of the whole trail, if you didn't know already, is dogs. And yeah, the dogs are bad. The dogs are really, really bad in this section. I hiked out of Bakurani and encountered the first pack of dogs right here, where I almost got bit twice. I then encountered another pack of dogs over here and managed to fend them off, and another pack of dogs over here who the shepherd came and saved me from. And then I was lucky enough to be in the shoulder season, so there were no dogs in this section, which is absolutely epic with these volcanoes. And there's a variation which I 100% recommend doing, which runs through the volcanoes here, and a variation I would like to test out someday, which would run straight here and up through the volcanoes and peak some of them and then go back down. I think this could be even better than the other variations. I certainly wouldn't do this loop down. I don't think it's worth your time, and you'll miss out on some of the best hiking. It's epic, wild, and very dangerous because you're very, very alone and no cars are coming to fetch you. Bakurani, all the way past Bavra, you're not going to find a store as well, so make sure that you shop for everything that you need in Bakurani, which is a great town with plenty of stores. For camping, you'll be able to camp almost anywhere. Just watch out for shepherds, not to camp near flocks or on a route that a flock will pass, because that's just not going to be the best way to wake up in the middle of the night with dogs barking at you from outside the tents. I've made some videos on social media about how to deal with dogs, so keep an eye out for those. I'll probably put out something longer at some point if I get around to it. This section is absolutely epic, worth doing if you're in a group especially. It's wild, it's untamed, and I enjoyed it as much as it was also flipping terrifying. Especially my dog encounter near the Bavra border. Oh my days. Maybe a note on that. This section right by the lake, don't go around the southern part of it, go around the northern part of the lake, because there are border control here, and I actually got flagged at this spot and told I needed to leave. So the route actually needs to change to go just above that lake. It's not that much difference in distance, but it is different in the border control's eyes. Okay, so part 2, section 6 to 11 is in Armenia, and I argue for the Armenian half of this trail being better than the Georgian half for a multitude of reasons, but mostly because the people are super friendly, and the atmosphere, the views are so different to what you'll encounter anywhere else in the world. It actually starts at Lake Apri, but I just walked straight from Bavra and met up with the route. This first section could really be split in two. This first half to Stepanovan, and then the second half. The first half is much like hiking in the previous section in Georgia. It's mountainous terrain, it's high veld, as we would call it in South Africa, grassland, with lots of shepherds. So watch out for dogs throughout this. There were herds in regular intervals all the way up this section, and I was dodging dogs a lot despite walking in snow. So I cannot imagine how scary it would be in summer. So yeah, maybe make note of that and probably start from Stepanovan if you are hiking alone, just the Armenian section. This bit from Stepanovan is great because you've bought some groceries, you've got your new SIM card, which is a key beta. Make sure you get into this little town and grab yourself a Armenian SIM card, because obviously your Georgian SIM card, which you hopefully got in Tbilisi, will have stopped working when you went through the Bavra border post, and then you can grab a new one here. It's about a 16-kilometer walk from the Bavra border to this little town. Grab the SIM card at Viva, I think it is, and then you can continue on. Camping, there's like a little camp spot. I stayed over here. There's some great camping in this little valley, and at the top of this valley. And then you don't want to camp in this sort of section between there and Stepanovan because there are just so many shepherds everywhere. It's beautiful, and it's a lot of elevation gain in quite a short amount of time. Then from Stepanovan, you're starting to go through towns, and this section is, oh man, I could hike this section again and again. Despite the fact that you're going through towns and it's quite rural, it's not wild, it's not mountainous, you're walking along the side of these chasms. This whole section is just these, it's like the Grand Canyon of Armenia, and the views are spectacular. You kind of go in and out of the chasms, and you think, oh, these detours don't make sense. They totally make sense. They make sense. Do them. Don't try cut shortcuts. It's not worth your time. There is a shortcut here, but you'll miss out on so much stuff. Don't do it. Don't do it. Walk this whole route and enjoy every minute. Stay in the local towns. There's little homestays. You'll find shops everywhere. You'll never have a problem with food or water. So easy going. Then the next section I split from Alverdi. So I'm going to just pop across to that. So section number 7, I think, is one of the nicest bits of hiking in Armenia and in the whole TCT. Particularly the section from Alverdi to Dilijan, and then Dilijan to Gosh. This last bit into Sevan is beautiful, but it's not as good. The big risks of this section are the dogs that you'll encounter over here and over here, and then in this section you'll see a lot of stray dogs, but they're usually quite chill and actually very friendly. I actually hiked with a dog all the way from Gosh to about here, about 10 kilometers, which was a really fun little side quest. This first section from Alverdi to Dilijan is about 85-ish kilometers, and I think it is one of the most superb bits of hiking to take even a family on. You can do it as a multi-day hike, camping first day up here and then about here, and then you want to do a big day to try and avoid as many of the dogs as possible, and then finish. So yeah, well worth doing. A lovely, lovely section. You will not find food anywhere between Alverdi and Dilijan. Dilijan has great stores, and then you'll hike with a whole bunch of other hikers across to Gosh, where you can get some food as well, not really worth your while, and then continue on, no stores, to Sevan. I didn't have a single problem with water along the route, despite this first section being a ridge the whole way. So I did do it fast. So if you were doing it a bit slower, you can find some water off trail, and then you're going to have to carry water, but you know it ahead of time, so take care of it and pack a bunch more water. And then from Dilijan to Gosh, there's no water between the two, and then you'll find water over here, and then none until Sevan. So yeah, certainly less water because you're on a ridge most of the time, but not a real problem. Okay, so section 8 runs from Sevan, where you'll probably stay in a homestay or hostel. Very big town, kind of dirty, not a very nice place. And you'll go into the next sort of blaring warning signs section of trail, but also one of the most amazing sections of trail. There's an option to go from Sevan and then break off to go down to gig hard. This is a hike that many people do apparently in the summer, and you're watching out for dogs the whole way. Unfortunately, it is dog central because it is sheep central. I was lucky enough to encounter none at all because I was on the shoulder season and I was in snowstorms throughout this whole section. And yeah, so one trade-off for another. I was grateful to not have the dogs, but the snowstorms were no joke. For camping, it's a pretty easy solution. Just camp wherever you want. There's good ones by these little lakes over here and over here as well. And then you can just really make a spot wherever you see fit. Watch out for lightning in the summer. It's apparently very dangerous. Blisteringly cold winds in the shoulder seasons, and snowstorms in the winter. This is also the highest point on the whole TCT, right on top of a volcano. Fantastic detour, well worth your time. And then you'll hike across this section with dogs as well, and right about here everything changes. It is a mind-blowingly beautiful thing. You move from grassland into the arid sort of desert-like terrain just in a moment. You walk over a hill and you just see the change happening. I was attacked by dogs over here and over here, so yeah, watch out for those. That's the major risk. Water you'll find in the lakes, so make sure you bring your filtration devices and carry enough to be able to get you from one lake to another. The TCT official map has labels of all those lakes. Some of them may be dry depending on the season, so beware of that. Then this next section really starts at 1,140-ish kilometers in the little town of Horse over there, and then you go down the valleys. There's some stores here and some really tough camping spots to find about here, and then you drop down into a very big town which is well worth staying in for a couple nights. Some great accommodation, a good rest spot. You're then moving through these arid terrain where you're not going to encounter very much water in drier seasons, but the streams are fairly decent in the shoulder seasons as far as I can tell. And the trail is usually gravel road and then with some bashing through bushes in intermittent sections. And then you'll encounter a whole bunch of hikers, maybe on that section, before camping up in some amazing viewpoints. Over here is where I started my biggest day, 100-kilometer day, from here all the way across to past Sisan, just out this. I did it in one day. The key risks of this section are actually hunters. There are hunters everywhere, hearing shotgun shots all the time. It's completely illegal, and I was actually told to evacuate out of this section when I was camping there. They said either you need to hide yourself or you need to leave because you don't want to encounter hunters at night. I didn't leave, I just hid, and I ended up hiking through this next section at night, 1 a.m. And it was fine, I didn't encounter anybody, but the nature reserve or the game reserve guys seemed to think it was pretty dangerous being in this area. Food you'll find in big town, and then nothing all the way until really sort of this town. You might find something. I found some stuff here, and then there's some stores over here, some detours. It's a 180-kilometer section, so it's a little bit more barren than most for the amount of distance you're covering. But yeah, it's a different kind of hiking. It's not like mind-blowing. It's kind of dusty and dirty and thorns and some bush bashing, and yeah, I don't know. It's not one I would go out of my way to try and do, but it's a fantastic portion of the existing trail. This next section has its ups and downs. It's from Sisan to about here is not very nice. You'll be walking across dump yards. It's a bit chaotic. There's a detour to this little town, which I don't know why it's there. Honestly, you can just walk the little road straight there. And there's hot springs, which are apparently nice, but I jumped in them and they are not nice. They're lukewarm, not really worth the detour. But this is where I ended my 100-kilometer day. I was absolutely trashed, and I walked to this lake where there was a fantastic camp spot. You pass by the lake and you go up about 300-400 meters up the slope, following the trail, and you'll find this flat spot with a view over the lake. Maybe I thought it was particularly nice because I spent a rest day there after being exhausted after 100 kilometers of hiking in 23 and a half hours. This next section has shops in this town with homestays. This section has some horrific climbing and scrambling through bushes. It's not the worst, but it's not great. And then there's a tiny little store in this town, and then you're blank until the end of the hike, unless you make the detour down into Kapan. So this is worth noting. If you want to fill up on food, you can do Tatev, and then you can push all the way to Megri in one go, which is 180 kilometers. Or you can make a detour to Kapan, which you can hitchhike this road. I was trying to avoid anything like that. I was being a bit stuck up. But yeah, you can make your way down to Kapan and fill up over there. But this whole section is full of stores. You'll camp in the valleys, you'll find spots, kind of hustling for them. And water, you want to buy in local stores primarily because the rivers are not fantastically clean. From Tatev, this section has some clean rivers and streams, and I actually got to stay in a wonderful house over here where I was invited to stay the night with the local community. It was lovely. This section doesn't really have very many risks. You encountering a lot of people, want to camp out of the way. There aren't really shepherds. I didn't encounter any dogs, and it begins to cool down when you walk through these trees, unlike the desert sort of sections you were in previously. And now we're in the final section of the whole trail, from Kapan all the way to Megri. And this is the section you'll be walking either absolutely excited for it to be done, or sad like me, wanting it to last. So I walked it slowly and ran out of food on the last day because I just didn't want to finish. This section from Kapan is worth doing a ridge that runs up here. Don't follow the route down here. There's an alternative. It will be in purple on the route map. This ridge is epic. If it's snowy or super windy or stormy, you probably want it to the lower, but it's a better route than the lower in general. And you'll have your final mountain where maybe you'll have a tear at the top because you just love the whole trail so much, and it's very sad saying goodbye to the last mountain. And then descending some roads. Once again, nowhere to buy food, so don't rely on that in any way before heading into sort of arid terrain, bashing through bushes there and some there, and the worst bashing of bushes in the whole hike. Well, okay, maybe the one between Zeska and Khebi is worse, but almost the worst in Armenia is right over there. And then you bashing through more bushes over here. I don't know why the end of the trail is so ratchet, but it's hard to be angry at it as you just appreciate the last bits of the trail and the views that you see, and the streams down in the bottom of the valleys. I enjoyed it despite it being a bit of a miserable experience. There is a thing I'll show you now which is worth noting. This is Megri is just out of the shot here. There is a fantastic detour which I should have done. My gut told me to do it, but I didn't, to avoid this terrible bashing through bushes. It's the last pass before going down to Megri. Rather than going down through here, just go up. It's a gravel road the whole way, and you will have a fantastic time. Not a terrible time, impossible path finding, and thorns everywhere. Just a note. For the final section, so that was over here. I just said that the detour goes over here. This final section, you'll be able to see Iran, which is this, the whole way down, and you'll be so happy and sad at the same time. And then you'll get to Megri, which is one of the most beautiful cities or towns you've ever seen, with fruit trees everywhere, and it's so green in this lush valley with mountains on the sides, and you'll just be so sad and so happy at the same time. Kind of externally processing here. The rest of the section, lack of food. Camping, you can just find wherever you want. There's very few people. It's quite epic. It's a good lonely way to finish the trail. Once you're done, what you're going to do is stay a couple days in Megri, because it is so amazing and you loved it so much and the food is nice and you just need to decompress. And then you're going to jump on a bus at 7:30 a.m. I believe in Megri, and it's going to take you all the way up in one go through the whole country, doing what took you weeks and weeks and weeks to Yerevan. You stay 1 or 2 nights in Yerevan, and then you'll take another bus all the way up to Tbilisi, where you can go and catch a flight out from Tbilisi International Airport. Trans-Caucasian Trail is no joke. It's no easy trail. Trail markings are here and there, but you're relying on your phone for navigation. But it's a life-changing experience and well worth doing. I'm going to be sharing a YouTube video about my whole experience and the changes I had in me throughout the hike. So keep an eye out for that. If you have any questions about doing this trail, about permits or anything like that, which there are barely any permits, there's just one that you're supposed to get from Borjomi, and then the border control permit. But the Borjomi one, we were told, don't bother by the game ranger, and the border control just gave us those. But if you have any questions, pop them below. I'll try and answer them. Hope this was helpful. Bit rambly, bit chaotic, but that's how it is. 1,500 kilometers from north to south of the Trans-Caucasian Trail. Definitely recommend doing it in the shoulder season, as I did. Avoid the summer storms, avoid the winter snow. But many people do it in the summer because they like the heat and are willing to bear the lightning, unlike me. See you in the next video.